Hi all. Quick video. In previous discussions, we spoke about direct material, direct labor, and overhead costs. And one of the questions that I'm curious on, and for your thoughts, are the allocation of overhead. We spoke before about how that it's so important to understand your exact cost, right? In order for you to have a cost, you can come up with your sales price and everything else associated with that. But as direct material, easy peasy, easy peasy, right? We know how much it costs per unit. Direct labor, we know the labor cost per unit. But overhead, when we think about overhead, we have to find a way to allocate, to take that overhead cost back and then spread that back to the various jobs. And how do we do that? Well, the perfect answer is we pick the method which best allocates the cost, right? The best, really back to the cost drivers. So, for example, if we find that we have a larger part of our overhead, might be related to a labor for managers. We have more supervisors on the line. Then an allocation method more related to direct labor allocation, whether direct labor hours or direct labor dollars. Either of those would probably be a better option. The same thing goes if we find that we have a lot of scrap, right? If you think about overhead, it can be everything from scrap to time to depreciation. Basically anything which is directly related to the product that's not direct material and direct labor will fall into overhead. So, if we find that we have a lot more scrap or something's being generated a lot more of that nature, then we might use a method which would be direct material dollars, or direct material quantity, some variation of that. Similarly, if we find out that most of our overhead is related to depreciation, well, that way we'll be able to use machine hours as the method for allocating manufacturing overhead back to a particular job. So it's really finding what is the key cost driver inside of your manufacturing overhead in order to select the right one. In future chapters, we'll talk more about direct material, the allocation methods, direct material, direct labor, direct material hours, direct material dollars, manufacturing overhead, machine hours, so forth and so on. But it's trying to find, really what is that key cost driver. But one of the concepts I wanted to kind of talk about briefly is fixed versus variable cost. If you think about a fixed costs are going to be constant, right? Every single month you're going to incur those same exact fixed costs month after month after month. And you can think about it in terms of rent, of a car payment. These are fixed costs. And the same thing with a business. Businesses have fixed costs. Salaried associates are a fixed cost. Rent, utilities, for those part, those are all fixed costs, right? They do not change with production. Your production can drop to zero. It can spike to 1,000,000 units a day. But overall, your fixed costs do not change. They're the same, 1 unit versus 10,000 units. But when it really comes to variable costs do change in relation to production. So, for example, if you're manufacturing more, you're going to use more raw material. If you manufacture more, you're going to require more direct labor. You manufacture more, you're going to require a higher transportation spend to be able to ship the products in, ship the products out. All those are variable components. And one of the things as a finance leader that you ultimately have to end up doing is really identifying those, say, here are the fixed costs, and really to the best of your ability, minimizing fixed costs, right? Because, things can happen, business change, nobody expected COVID. So it's always our goal to reduce the number of fixed costs that we possibly can deal with and try to roll them over to be a variable cost, variable component. Sometimes a little bit more difficult than that, but, that's ultimately one of the goals that we do. And we can do that either through contract negotiation or, just, really pushing, our agenda on that. But you think about manufacturing, if I produce 1 unit, I require X number of units of raw material, X number of direct labor hours, and X number of manufacturing overhead. But the more units I make, the greater the cost that's going to be, right? So what you'll see is your direct material cost, direct labor costs, and manufacturing overhead cost. It'll spike, right? So the first thing sometimes non-finance people will say is like, "Oh my gosh, look at these costs. They're amazingly high. Why? and they get worried. And the ultimate answer that we give them is like, well, they're variable cost. We make more. We naturally expect to have our labor cost and overhead cost and so forth increase. Similar with transportation. Sometimes people think of transportation as a fixed cost. It's not. It's a variable component. The more units you make, the more units you ship out to a customer, whether it's FedEx, UPS or Swift, whoever the carrier that you end up using, its ultimate comes down to the more you make, the more transportation cost you have. So one fun exercise that I always recommend as you get to as you look at any business, go down the line and identify if something is a fixed versus a variable cost, because that's going to really help you in understanding and explaining it to to your management team. And one of the greatest things about accounting is that you get to do a lot of explanation. It's not just numbers. It is really having more of a conversation and explaining these concepts to non-finance people. The next question I have for you guys is, what does it mean by an opportunity cost? I'm going to leave that one open for you and just have you all post inside either the YouTube channel or just really explain on the discussion side. It won't be for any points or anything. Just to get an idea, just have a little bit more interaction with you all. What are opportunity costs? Are they good? Are they bad? And just, really, what in general are they? All right, the very brief on that one, but talk to you soon. Bye.